Hi everybody, it's Andy here, and as you can see, we've got our usual motley crew, which is Rich, we've got Guy, we've got Esther, and we've got Embers. Hi guys, how you doing?
Yeah,
Good, thanks.
Good, thanks.
Get in there.
Hi,
Today we're going to be talking about something which I think is, well, it's another one of those Pratt arguments, one that you, Richard, put up onto on the Twitter and stuff like that, and
The fourth
this
and
came
final.
out as one as well, and this is there are no atheists in foxholes. And this is a bit of an aphorism where, which is used to suggest that in times of severe stress or fear, in other words, like you're as if you're in a foxhole in the middle of a war facing death, that someone who identifies as an atheist suddenly turns to God to save them. And so we're going to talk about that and debunk it a little bit. But hopefully we'll talk about it in sort of psychological terms as well, because there's lots of things that go on in this. There's lots of psychology that goes on in this. So do you want to just give a bit of a background, a bit more depth?
Yeah, sure. So once again, this is the fourth and the final of the Pratt arguments that which we were asked to look at via Twitter. The reason why I think this one came fourth out of the four is because I think this is one that has had quite a lot of attention over the years, and again is so wrong it's not even wrong. But so the idea that there are no atheists in foxholes, there are no atheists on the battlefield, etc., etc., is it's an implication that some religious people have, whether they're serious about it or not, I don't know, but they tell jokes to imply that their belief is correct because, as they say, all atheists run crying back to God when they get scared. And of course, and like many of these arguments, it follows sort of a structure, which generally goes: an atheist basically says that they don't believe in a God. They're placed under stress, often in something like life-threatening severe stress, and starts behaving like a theist. So they start praying or they call out to God. It's usually calling out to God. The believer then says, well, therefore the atheist actually does believe in my God. Therefore they're not an atheist. They actually do believe in God. And, they should never have called themselves an atheist in the first place, etc., etc. Of course, there are a number of problems with this. Firstly, some of these exhortations could just be an opportunity to swear in a tough situation, because, as we all know, when we're in a tough situation, using God as a swear word is a very common thing. Yelling the name of Jesus in a similar circumstance, as opposed to other particular circumstances, maybe, but in highly stressful, life-threatening circumstances, is something that people do, atheists and believers alike, actually. So that's one part of the argument. But actually, one of the things that I also find about this is I've been in stressful, life-threatening situations. I've been in a couple over the years. As many people, many listeners know, I used to be a serving police officer. And there have been a couple of incidents that I have attended which turned life-threatening to me. I'd gone to a call and someone ran around a corner and started shooting in our general direction. And I have to admit, I probably yelled out one of those particular swear words once I'd realised what had happened. Funnily enough, I didn't actually realise that was somebody shooting at us, but there you go. And there was another occasion where, I don't know if anybody knows Central London at all. I was in Leicester Square, and there was an incident at one of the clubs on Leicester Square, which had been oversold. and the club owners decided to shut the club down. So you had 2,000 people trying to stream out, and there were another 500 people outside who were trying to get in, and I almost got crushed to death. But I will say I may have sworn, I may have came out with one of those expletives. I don't know so long ago if I actually did or not. But at not one point did I actually believe that there was a God there that was going to save my life. In the first case, it was a case of me keeping up on my feet to make sure I didn't get trampled to death. And in the other, it was just a realization that that had happened and nobody had gotten hurt. But I didn't pray. I didn't actually call out to a God in the sense of actually calling out to a God. And one of the things that I think is very clear is there are lots and lots and lots of atheists in the military. In fact, if you go to the United States, which of course has the largest military in the world, they even have atheist and free thought organizations within the military to cater to the needs of non-believing soldiers. So to actually say that there are no atheists in Foxholes is on the first in the first blush totally untrue, and the way that the argument is phrased is totally ridiculous to start with.
Yeah, I saw. Sorry, go on, Emma.
Sorry, Andy, go on. No, after you, Andy, go on.
No, I was just saying that I saw when I was doing a little bit of research for this, because there is I've heard this so many times. This there are no atheists in Foxholes, and the thing that really sort of struck me about this more than anything else was that when you actually look into this, there are serious debunking of this concept, because people do believe it. The religious do tend to believe it. I think when it first came out, it was rather a flippant comment. It was almost like, if you come from a position where you believe in God anyway, and let's face it, in the sort of in the past, in wars in the past, you would have probably had quite a lot of people who were genuine God believers. They go to church on a Sunday and then they go to war. And it was just like a flippant comment. You wouldn't find an atheist in a foxhole. It's like you need something to appeal to, something out there to appeal to that gets you out of where you are right now. So I can see it as a flippant comment, but there's a lot of things where people are taking this as a serious thing, that if you are in stress, you will go running back to God as if that's what we'd do. Now, like a lot of us here, I've not really been a God believer for my whole life. I mean, I've never really sort of been a God believer, so I've never sort of had that. So I can't go running back to it, and I can't see how being under stress I would suddenly become a God believer. Because it would be completely an anathema to me, or it would be completely wrong to me. So I think it's a flippant comment for a lot of, when it first came out. I looked at the different people it could have been attributed to, and there's like 4 or 5 different people it could have been attributed to in the modern age. But it's that sort of thing, that same sort of thing, that psychological aspect goes back thousands of years. It's the same old. But when you're talking about the atheists in the army, I saw something where they said there was like 7% in the US Army. There was something like 7% of the people that are in the army actually say they are atheist. So
And in fact, I've just done a little bit of research myself, and there is an organisation called the Defence Humanists, which is an organisation formerly known as the UK Armed Forces Humanist Association. So we actually also have a British version of our own. And over the last time it was counted in 2012, there were over 26,000 serving members of the British Armed Forces who basically said they had no religion, and it meant that they were once again in the UK, certainly the largest category after Christianity, and significantly larger than the total of other major religious affiliations. Actually, the most recent is April 2020. Sorry about getting my numbers mixed up here. But apparently almost 32% of serving members of the British Armed Forces describe themselves having no religion.
And there is also a Facebook page, I think it is, called Atheists in Foxholes.
Yes.
Just to add extra grist to the mill. The other thing I think that's relevant to this is that is my own experience as a celebrant, which I've stopped being now a humanist celebrant, but I was a humanist celebrant for about 8 or 9 years. I had occasion on a number of occasions I sat with people who were dying to prepare their funerals for them in advance of their death. So they were facing the end of their life, which, according to the theme, is a stressful event and an event likely to cause you to return to God belief and invoke God's name and so forth. But in no case did I ever find that. I found people were stoic and were calm. They were resigned, obviously, but their main concerns was for those they left behind. And many of them were approaching it with quite a level of humor, perhaps a little bit dark humor, but humor nonetheless. And I was really impressed with the sort of bravery and courage of these people. And I think that's the impression I have in relation to people in that sort of situation.
So, a few days ago, I saw someone did this TikTok, and what the question asked was, during an airplane turbulence, how do atheists keep calm? And then his answer was, he said that's actually a funny question. He said, well, since the atheists don't pray, I think they hope that the prayers of the believers get answered, or they hope that Spider-Man will come and save them during, well, he was supposed to be trying to be funny, because he's definitely a believer atheist. Now, I this is one of the few things that stopped me from leaving the religion, if you know what I mean. It was one of the few things that held me back, because I was thinking, so if there was a need for this sort of thing, if I found myself in a plane, it's about to crash, who will I then pray to? Who will I, but then I just had to really think this through, and just imagined that there are so many religions out there in the world. So I only know Christianity. I don't know any other religion. I was never introduced to any of these. So I was thinking, imagining in a plane, right? The Muslim will call on Allah. The Christian will call on, so which God exactly should the atheist be calling out to? I think when that question is solved, then I might worry about that. But for now, that's how I that's the thought process I had.
For the believer, it's actually quite simple. It's whatever God they're calling out to, it's mine. But,
I mean,
I'm going to go with the Spider-Man option, because I think it's much more.
I was just thinking this at
a Spider-Man suit.
It's the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, No, it's true. It's more likely that somebody dressed in a Spider-Man suit is going to come and rescue you than waiting for God, because that's never going to happen.
Mm.
So I'm a Spider-Man all the way.
Of course,
I mean, I think that
I call out to
You
the
know-
pilot and hope he or she has got their hands on the stick.
Mhm. And
I mean-
also these kind of conversations actually helps you to appreciate your mortality, if you know what I mean. It makes you just realize that one thing's guaranteed: we all would die at some point, and just
Speak for yourself.
realizing. Sorry, what did you
Speak for
say?
yourself. I plan to live forever.
And this helps you to appreciate the end. And someone told me about them. I don't know if it was one of you. I've heard this before. Attended a funeral where the person who was conducting the service said they think the person was in hell. The person who they were burying, they think they've gone to hell. So I just imagined a scenario where maybe that person was an atheist and didn't leave a will and didn't leave a last testament as to what they wanted for their funeral. And so things like this makes me think, I know what I would, you have to make a plan. I don't want to be taken to a church. And I hope to get this point across before it happens, because the last thing I want is for myself to be taken to a church and then the preacher would turn around and say, Esther's in hell. So, and all of you give your life to Christ now so you don't end up in hell like Esther did. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, that's an important point for I have one such person, or I did have, who wanted me to take his funeral, and he was worried that his Muslim relatives would swoop in when he died, grab his body, and give it a Islamic funeral. So he's actually literally got notices all around his house saying, "If I'm found dead, contact Guy Otter." So that's a heavy responsibility for me.
Let's hope that the police don't misinterpret that.
But there is a sense in which if a person, atheist or not, is in a dire situation of threat to their life, what is really useful is calm thinking and being collected in the face of this danger. And it is, I don't think it's impossible that someone who utters a prayer may not actually get through that prayer some sense of calmness and collection. But I think that can be achieved by meditation and by, being the right sort of character and personality to do it. By the same token, if someone calls out, "Oh, God, save me," that actually may be the last thing that they should be doing. They may be giving their position away, or they may, in fact, by invoking God, be failing to make the right decision at the right time. So that you can look at it. You mentioned, you wanted to look at it from a psychological point of view, and I think there are these psychologies going on there, these interesting facets of the problem that we can look at.
I think it's also very cultural, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, it's sort of, putting yourself in that position. If you was in a war, it seems like the sort of thing is, you just think, hope I can get through this. It's like you're almost trying to invoke some sort of divine intervention in some way. So the way your mental attitude will go in those situations, you just think, I just hope I can get through this. Hope there's some way of actually getting through this. Now, if you believe in God, then you'll say, I hope God gets me through it. If you're an atheist, you're going to do it. You go through exactly the same mental process, but you just hope that somehow something will get you through this, and that something is basically luck. With an atheist, it's basically, I just hope that my actions are the right actions for me to get from this position to the other side of this position. You know, that's so there's the psychology is, I think, is very, very similar. It's just like we look on, you know, luck and you know, presence of mind and trying to do the right thing at the right time and get to the other side of something, whereas a theist would just culturally say, you know, hope God gets me through this. What they're actually saying is, I hope I can get through this by some sort of luck and some sort of judgment that comes, you know, in this situation. You know, so, you know, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, and actually, one of the interesting things that you actually said there about the culture, you know, one of the things that we've mentioned him before on the podcast, Dr. Darrell Ray from the God virus fame, he actually says, you know, if you are in a religious culture or a culture that has been shaped by previous religions, someone like an atheist will say, "Oh God, what now?" or "Oh God, help me," or "God help us all." It's that in itself is a cultural artifact of the society in which they live. They're not actually evoking a god. That is just the cultural phrase that one sort of just repeats out of habit. I mean, a great example is someone sneezes. What do not necessarily us, but what do most people say when someone sneezes?
Bless you.
Bless you. Right. And I used to do that. I used to do that all the time, even after I was very, very much convinced of being an atheist. I do actually just say I quite like Gesundheit. I quite like that, and I say that now whenever someone sneezes. But it took a conscious effort to not say bless you.
Yeah.
It takes a conscious effort not to say oh God, and in fact, actually, I still say it reflexively.
Yeah.
Well, we've done it on this podcast.
Yes.
Not
times.
this actual one, but on podcasts that we do when we're doing podcasts, you know, we'll say something that someone's done that's stupid, like something, you know, a theist has said something stupid. And you're like, oh, God, you know, and we do it. It is cultural.
I think there's a movement now to say Gesundheit when people sneeze.
That's what I say.
It's a great idea,
and that's what I say.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember my dad, who was a sort of lapsed Anglican. When he felt annoyed, when we would say "oh fuck" or something, or God or something, he would say "Beelzebub."
There goes that clean tag.
Not a bad one.
Yeah.
Beelzebub.
I think for me, I try not to respond to anybody sneezing with expressions like that, and I never say "bless you" or anything. I usually have to end up saying, "Is it tissue next time, will you?"
Or actually, you know. You okay? You're right.
Right. That's not too bad.
Sorry,
for myself,
sorry.
It's okay. Have you seen some theists, believers? Have you seen them pray at all? Have you seen what some of these prayers look like?
Yeah,
some of these prayers look like complete just rubbish, especially the ones who speak in tongues. And I think to myself, these prayers, what exactly do these prayers actually do for you? What exactly are they supposed to? Because if you're speaking in tongues, they mean nothing, absolutely nothing. And now there's people. Well, when I was still a believer, we were told that when there's nothing else to pray about, just pray in tongues. God understands the language. And also this was the interesting part, that the devil does not understand tongues, speaking in tongues. The devil don't understand that. So because there's a scripture in the Bible that says, I forgot which of the prophets was praying, and his prayers did not get to God straight away because a demon had had blocked or stopped these prayers and didn't get to God straight away. So by praying in tongues, you prevent that prayer from getting to God. So what if these theists say they find themselves in a foxhole or they find themselves in a turbulence? What if a demon was to stop this prayer from getting to God until 21 days? It's just the mental. I don't know if my point is getting across. It's the prayers that they do pray. Just it's mind-boggling. It gets to the point where, for me, it was quite a shock to realize that prayers are not answered. That these prayers mean nothing. Oh, that was a huge
Esther,
shock.
though, all that stuff, it just, I've heard this as well. I know that we've spoken about this before, but I've heard about these sort of things, and it just goes to me. It just goes to show that it is all just made up. It is seriously all just made up. That someone will say, "Oh, this is happening," and someone else will make up another little piece of some sort of concept to get round it and things like that. It happens all the time, and it's not loads of stuff that the religious people talk about is just not in the Bible. It's just made up afterwards. What if this happens? I know what happens there. Then this angel comes down and he strokes your hair. It's just all made up crap.
And I think one of the interesting things I just remember now, thinking back to the great cinematic masterpiece that was Die Hard 2, where Bruce Willis's wife is in the plane and they're running out of fuel, and she starts repeating the Hail Mary prayer, and repeated the Hail Mary and repeated it and repeated it and repeated it. And all it was just a mantra to occupy the mind, to take the mind off the stressful situation that it was currently in. And that's how I saw that. It'd be interesting, again, to bring in our resident psychologist, Embers, whether that actually has any basis that you know of in the psychological literature.
Oh, yes. Well, I think all of you touched on this since we've been talking. In situations, certainly serious ones where your life may be at risk, they're very, very stressful. And certainly situations where you don't have control over what the outcome may be, they're very stressful indeed. So anything that will distract you from that, you pray to God, you can pray to Spider-Man, everything that takes your mind off it. However, you probably all have heard a term called situational awareness. So it's a military, police term, etc. And it means being aware of the situation that you're actually in at the time. So if you think about it, people want to survive. So we all know about the survival instinct. But if you're taken up with just praying to God, that's the wrong strategy. One, because God isn't going to come, and you're not doing anything else to help the situation. So if I was in a situation, what I want is the rest of my team. I want the paramedics, I want the brigade, anybody who is a passerby, it doesn't matter who it is. I'm not going to waste my time praying to a non-existent God. It might make me feel better, but I'm going to get killed.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, situational awareness is exactly what kicked in during my crowd crushing incident, because if I started taking my mind off what was going on, and didn't spend all of my energy staying on my feet, concentrating, keeping my balance, not sort of tripping over other people, if my mind wasn't completely and totally focused on that, I would have tripped, I would have fallen, and I could have been trampled to death. But the great thing was, within about, which is one of the things, a great thing about working in central London as a police officer, is you put out a call for help, within 30 seconds it's there. And and my control room actually was watching on the CCTV cameras at the time. They saw me getting swept away. But as I say, that situational awareness, the fight or flight instinct kicks in. And, and I was solely focused on staying upright. I wasn't praying. I wasn't calling out to a god. I wasn't doing any of those things. And
you do have to have your wits about you, don't you?
Oh yeah.
I've been in some serious crushes, and it is scary. It is really scary, because your control is taken away from you because you're in the heaving mass. I didn't have any time to think about anything else about an exit route. But if you think about it from this point of view, if you just stop and praying to God, you're not really doing anything. And people in your situation, you have the rest of your crew to look after as well. So if you're distracted doing something that's completely useless, you may as well not be there, because you're not adding anything to the situation to improve it. If that makes sense.
So talking about psychology, I don't know if you guys know about the study that was done on the effectiveness of prayer. So this is an article from Psychology Today. Talked in 2006. The Templeton Foundation, they did an empirical study of the possible effects of prayers. And the study, the researchers randomly divided up over 1,800 coronary bypass heart surgery patients from 6 different hospitals into 3 groups. The first group had Christians praying for them, and Christians prayed that the selected heart patients will have a successful surgery with a quick, healthy recovery with no complications. And then the patients in these groups, they were told that people might or might not be praying for them. The second group of heart patients were not prayed for, but they were also told that they might or might not have been, they might not or might not have had people praying for them. The third group was prayed for, and these patients were told that they definitely were being prayed for. Now, the Christians that were doing all the praying were given the first name and the last initial of the specific patient they were to pray for. Now, this was the outcome. There was virtually no difference in the recovery trajectory of each group, with all 3 groups experiencing more or less the same rates and levels of complications. The only minor difference that did arise actually worked against the prayers. 18% of the patients who had been prayed for suffered major complications, such as strokes or heart attacks, compared to 13% of the patients who did not receive any prayers at all.
Yeah, I had heard of that. I had heard of that study. In fact, that study was mentioned in the God Delusion, which I know was a book which many people had as they found it their way out of religion through reading that. And I think I think one of the things that was said was, "Oh my God, they're calling in the prayer team. I must be in a worse condition than I thought I was in." And another one described it as performance anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good example, because over many years there've been lots of studies done along similar lines. It's not just the Templeton Foundation. As soon as you mention the word Templeton, that's it. I'm out, because you know exactly what they're up to. But they looked at prayer doing this, and you can interpret the results in any way you want. So found that prayer just didn't have any better success, not that it was any success, than just sheer chance. So you've got all sorts of different ways to interpret this. But the problem is, if you pray for something, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So anything that comes out after you say prayer can be attributed to the prayer actually working. So it's a bit of chicken and egg, if that makes sense.
Can I ask you guys a question? So we're talking about atheists in foxholes, right? And a lot of us are atheists because we haven't got sufficient evidence for to believe in a God. So my question is, if a God were to show himself, herself to you today, tomorrow, if a God was to turn up, would you let me see how I'm going to phrase this question. Would you worship said God? Would you I will go along and answer the question myself, but I would love to hear what you guys think.
How do we know that this is actually a God that has revealed themselves? What evidence have they provided that they are actually a God? And have they done anything worth worshipping?
Yeah. I mean, and there's another point that any God who appears may not know whether he really is a God. There may be another superior God behind him who will close him down at any time. So it's all very, there's a massive uncertainty around this whole business.
And also, if a God appeared to me, the first thing I will be doing is be checking myself into a psychiatric unit just to be assessed, just to make sure that I wasn't actually hallucinating myself.
The trouble is, Rich, these days you have to campaign for several months to get anywhere near a psychiatric unit. I was doing my chaplaincy. I was doing my chaplaincy yesterday, and there was a guy there who was suffering PTSD because his daughter was murdered, and he'd been asking to be admitted and to be looked after in a unit for months and months, and not being admitted.
Well, the inadequacies of our mental health care system notwithstanding, and that wasn't meant to, and those answers weren't meant to sound flippant, because I'm actually deadly serious. You know, if something appeared in front of me that claimed to be a god, I'd want to be sure that it was one.
Yeah, can I just say one thing here, just before we go? This should be a podcast in its own right, and this is an interesting question, because I actually spoke to a friend of mine the other day about specifically this, and he came out with something which I thought was really, really interesting. But I think we can do this as a.
Well, I agree. This is a big question.
It is a big question.
Almost as big as why members get kicked out of Sunday school, but
let's schedule it, Andy, for another time.
Yeah, we'll do. The thing I'd like to sort of just round this up a little bit with, have you heard of a book which is called Last Letters from Stalingrad? Frank Schneider edited these letters from soldiers from 1943. Have you anybody heard of that?
No.
I've heard of it, but I've never actually read it.
Yeah, because I had a look at something just because of this, because this sort of reminded me of this. I'd read about this before, and it just to sort of set it up a little bit. It was in the winter of '43 when Hitler had sent thousands of soldiers into Russia. And it sort of hits on what's going on now as well. It's sort of more poignant now, I think, because of what's going on with Ukraine and stuff like that. But Hitler had sent tens of thousands of soldiers into Russia to capture an important industrial center in the Caucasus region, which was a really, really bad idea. The German soldiers ran out of food, ran out of ammunition, they froze and starved to death, or were killed by Russians. You know, it was a true hell. And this is really to do with this, atheists in foxholes thing. And so, there was literally hundreds of thousands of casualties. Amongst such misery, many of these young men found comfort in their religious faith. You know, as you expect, if you've got a religious faith, the people will find comfort in it, and as they starved and froze to death and things like that. But not all of them were like that. Some of the men couldn't turn to the comfort of faith because they had lost their faith during that war. Amidst this drawn out pain and suffering, the fear and everything else, some of these soldiers became atheists. And there's these letters in this book, and I just wanted to. I picked up a couple of them because I've got it on a PDF. I've got the book on a PDF which I downloaded, and there's one soldier wrote in Stalingrad. to put the question of God's existence means to deny it. I must tell you this, Father. And this is obviously a letter to his father. And I feel doubly sorry for it. You've raised me because I had no mother and always kept God before my eyes and before my soul. And I regret my words doubly because these will be my last. You're a pastor, Father. I have searched for God in every crater, in every destroyed house, in every corner, in every friend, in my foxhole and in the sky. God did not show himself. Even though my heart cried for him, the houses were destroyed. The earth, there was hunger and murder. The sky, and from the sky came bombs and fire. Only God was not there. No, Father, God is not there. And there's another one, and this is sort of, when you read these things, these are young men. I mean, if you think they're going to be sort of 17, 18, 20 years old, that sort of thing. There's another one that said, this will be my last letter, perhaps forever. The situation has become untenable. The Russians are within 3 kilometers. If there is a God, I don't believe any longer that God can be good. And then he would not permit such injustice. I don't believe it anymore, for he would have enlightened the minds of those people who begun this war. I don't believe in God anymore. He has betrayed us. I don't believe anymore. And that's another letter. And this is basically, I mean, when I read this morning, I was thinking of myself, this is so relatable to what's going on right now in Ukraine. But it really relates to this concept that people don't turn to God. In fact, a lot of people actually become atheists in war because they just see the desperation and the horror, and no God turns up to help. I just thought it was really, really, really poignant.
And I look at the scenes that we're seeing literally, today at time of recording, of fathers saying goodbye to their children in Ukraine, not knowing whether or not they will ever see their children again. And I'm also reminded of a piece of graffiti that was scrawled into the walls of, I think it was Auschwitz, by some of the prisoners there, which basically said, if there is a God, he will need to seek my forgiveness. And we see those scenes, we see what is going on, and whilst this conflict that we're currently facing is not one that I think has a religious element to it, one of the few that doesn't have a religious element to it, unless you were talking about the cult of Putin, it seems more and more clear to me, and we can talk about the argument from evil on another podcast as well, but you see what's happening there, and there is no way that certainly a good, all-powerful and all benevolent God exists.
So we could argue that actually in Foxholes, in that situation, there are more atheists.
Yeah.
Because they recognize that there's no God going to help them.
Yeah.
So maybe
I think this is what this book, these last letters from Stalingrad, if you get a chance to read it, I mean, it's pretty horrific. But I pulled out those two, but there's other letters in that where soldiers are just basically saying there's no God. If this is the world, there is no God. If this is what happens in this world, there is no God. And so it sort of turns it on his head. As I said right at the beginning, it was a flippant sort of, I think it's a flippant comment. There's no atheists in foxholes. It's a flippant sort of comment. But I think in the reality, and when you look at the psychology of all this, it actually turns the other way. When people see the horrors of war, especially
if there were actually a God, there would be no foxholes.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, except for foxes.
Except for foxes, yeah. But I think this is why I think it's important to see it this way around, because this is probably more relevant that, you know, when people see the horrors of war, that it points that there is no savior God. You know, this is, you know, it's down to us. It's down to human beings to stop this crap. We can't appeal to anything else, some sort of divine justice. You know, because it's like when you hear about the, you know, people sort of say, oh, you know, after Auschwitz, you know, the people who did that, well, they've got a special place in hell. No, they haven't. There's no such thing as hell. We've got to put these people on trial and sort these people out. Exactly the same as what we do here. You know, there's no hell. There's no divine justice. It's only human justice, and we've got to take responsibility for that.
Well, that was cheerful.
Yeah.
So, bringing it back to my usual closing comment, I know I didn't actually ask this last time, but if somebody then were to come to you and use the argument that there are no atheists in foxholes, and that under times of extreme stress, we all go back to God, what are you going to say to them?
I'll send you a copy of Last Letters from Stalingrad.
Stalingrad, yeah.
Well, I'm an atheist. I've always been an atheist, and I have been a foxhole, and I have been shot at, and I'm still an atheist. And I didn't pray to God.
Yeah.
Just focuses the mind, though, I tell you, it really does.
I think for me, I would love to know which God exactly are we talking about.
Well, it's the God of whoever speaks. As I said before, it's the God who is the God of whoever is actually making that comment. Usually, but yeah.
I think I've led a charmed life because I missed conscription by 2 or 3 years. I've never been in the military, and I've never been in any really dangerous situations. So I was going to say I have to thank somebody. If I got to thank somebody for that, I have to think who I might have to thank. Obviously not God.
Well, your parents for having you at about the right time.
Yeah, maybe.
But see, this is why I say that, you know, where this appeal of God is the same as the appeal of luck. You know, thank God, thank luck.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
That's given me a very good idea, Guy. So thanks for bringing that up. I always carry in my wallet open donor card with me.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start a scheme where you can have a little card in your wallet and say, in the case of extreme danger or life-threatening situations or death, please pray to this God for me. So as well, just look in somebody's wallet, because you don't want to get it wrong, do you? Because you don't want to be praying.
Please pray to the spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
Guys, that's been brilliant. I think it's been really interesting. As I say, we will put a podcast together about those other subjects we talked about today as well, because I think they are bloody interesting. So, but as far as I think our time's sort of up by now. Been really, really interesting, guys. Thanks for joining us. And if you like this sort of thing, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and you know, tell other people about it. Spread the word, share it, like it, all the usual things. And if you've got any ideas of what we can talk about on these podcasts, also put that in the comments and things like that. So
can I just say that yesterday we had our Northern Atheist meeting, and one person turned up who specifically mentioned the podcasts.
Oh, lovely.
Oh,
good.
Fantastic. Hello out there for you Northern Atheists who've been listening. Come on, Southerners, let's time for us to get together as well. And
fantastic, guys. Been great, and we'll see you next time. See you later.
Bye.
Well, cheers.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and don't forget to click that like button. Also, make a comment, and of course, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.